Okay, this story starts as spring turns to summer. For thematic effect, the sequence of days in which this movie are centered around have been rearranged. Though, for the record, this creative decision has had no bearing on the factual integrity of this story. At the heart of this is a travel story, what the last few weeks of my life have amounted to. It had been a while since my mom and I had gone on a trip together, just the two of us. We were overdue for a new adventure. Made it to Seattle.
All inside our Amsterdam she hides.
Like most everything I set out to make, I didn't have much of an idea of how any of this would take shape. I just grabbed a couple cameras and shot everything. You have to live enough life to capture anything meaningful. I knew that I'd be making this movie, at least in part, a movie about cities. The one that sparked the whole idea for this trip was Amsterdam. I had this image of it, in the most idyllic sense, a place where artists go to hide out, escape the noise of their world, a place to overcome writer's block or get over a lover or come back with a few new ones. I wasn't there for any of that, not this time anyways, and this trip was about so much more than just Amsterdam. I could tell you about all the cities we saw, or the museums we visited with art from far-off places with all kinds of history to pass on, or the bike ride between borders, or what it was like to see Dunkirk, or one of the coolest bookstores I've ever been to. This scene is dedicated to Max Joseph. Or the 366 steps it took to get to the top of the Belfry in Bruges. But this movie isn't really about any of that either. Meet Mom, one half of the only reason I exist. My imagination was fostered and protected growing up because of her. She was the first person to make me feel like it was okay to do things differently. The books she read to my brother and I, they're where I fell in love with storytelling. They're the only reason I found a roadmap to create myself. I don't think I'll ever be given a greater gift. This is a photo from when she lived in a small town in Spain for the better part of a year. These are my favorite stories she tells me today. We've ran out of euro. Going to exchange. All right, just rush them. Mission successful. We closed the shop. Okay, let's go buy hookers. Mom, she's been this constant voice of reason to confide in, too. One that's kept me out of trouble this year, kept the inner Kerouac in me humbled and in one piece. She's been the foundation of support my whole life, and this year, as the path I was on started to unravel, she put her trust in me when it's all I asked for. There's no one else, in life, I'd rather spend these moments with. All right, it's getting heavy. What started as a trip to Amsterdam turned into more of a cross-country's do-it-yourself tour. Among the gear used to tell this story was this expedition memo book. I gave one to Mom, too, and we both recorded our own observations and ideas from the trip, the stuff we didn't want to forget. She collaged, and I wrote about Dylan and the cute French girl we met on our first day in France that didn't speak English, who was on my mind. In addition to the notebooks, I bought a couple Kodak disposable point-and-shoots to bring with us. In the last few years, I've lost my love of photography. For me, it's become this thing I take for granted on my iPhone. I wanted to change that, or at least try something new. I don't know if this will give me what I'm after once the novelty wears off, but as far as firsts go, I know that one day, I'll look back at these photos in the same way I look at the ones that captured my childhood on film. I don't believe many things in life are sacred, but these memories, if there was ever something to convince me otherwise. At some point in Ghent, a city we went to in Belgium, we heard live music, and Mom just started dancing through the streets and on the steps. Behind you. She's always like this. Eventually, she made it to the dance floor, and I wrote in my notebook. That night, we stayed in the strangest Airbnb. Even beyond all the cool Warhol memorabilia, I don't think either of us are ever going to forget our host. He had these portraits of himself put up throughout the house. We kept moving. We never stayed in the same place for long. I've been on more planes than I can count. I spent a lot of my childhood 31,000 feet in the air. The wonder of it all has long faded. But trains, there's something about trains that still light up the same part of my brain they did when I was younger. The thing about them for me is it feels like you're running. Maybe I've seen too many movies, but when you hop on, it feels like you're narrowly avoiding capture, and then you step off in a whole different country. It feels like you can begin a new life by just getting on a train. But I could just be projecting. That feeling of capture, at least, it's something I became all too familiar with this past year. Everything went upside down for a minute there, but now, for the first time in a long time, I'm not making these movies to run from something because I have to. I'm making them because I love to. All that freedom, all that peace, everything I was so afraid to lose, I guess it was always there, just a ways down the tracks. Okay. What's the next part of this story? Now, I'm a filmmaker, for all the romantic reasons too. I put dreams above all, I'm a sucker for bookends, and I probably spend too much time looking to the past for how the dots will connect. It shouldn't come as a surprise then, that it feels like I've been here before, telling a different version of the same story 2 years later. The setup is the same, some of the ending too. I'm across an ocean, a long way from home, and the person I'm closest to in the whole world is by my side. So I guess this is the second part to that story, the one I started to tell a while ago, when I was someone else. On the way back from the first trip, on the drive home from the airport, I wrote to someone I knew then, and on this flight home, during the first day of summer, I wrote to her again, this time as someone I used to know. I was playing my role to bring things full circle. If I could go back, if I could say something to the kids starting this, I'd tell them to be careful not to confuse excitement with conviction, that it'll only get you to a place where you'll have to spend a lot of energy running away from what you've made. I'd tell them the finish line is always different from how you imagine it, and when you get there, you realize it's a starting line for what comes next. But I don't know. I can only say I'm here now, and
somehow it feels like an ending, spoken like a true beginner. We're gonna get there.